What if Jake Paul fought Faze Temper? Although after recent, less recent, and more recent events, this may sound impossible, at one point in time, this was actually looking quite likely. How, why, what, when, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, watch the end because I'm going to explain to you how this would have happened, what would have happened, and how would have it changed the future of YouTube boxing. Well, firstly, two things can't happen. Jake Paul can't make that deal with Showtime Boxing because although this was massive for Jake, it narrowed down a lot of the opponents that he could actually face, being boxers, MMA fighters, kickboxers. But because Faze members don't fit into this bracket, this can't happen. And secondly, Jake can't have any bad blood with Tyron Woodley. I mean, this is one of the main things which ever prevents this fight with Faze Temper happening, but I don't want to confuse you and go into too much depth, so let's just erase Tyron Woodley from this whole situation. He never wants to fight Jake Paul, he declines Jake Paul's offer, and yeah, that leaves Jake Paul with only one result. Alright, so after Jake Paul beat Ben Askren in beautiful fashion, the word beautiful is subjective by the way, before any boxing heads come watching this video and abuse me in the comments. Faze Temper actually took to Instagram and YouTube and Twitter and all his social medias to call Jake Paul out for a boxing match, telling him to fight a real fighter. In reality, Jake Paul ignored this, went on to Tyron Woodley and on to better things. But in this world, Jake Paul loved it. He saw Faze Temper as a guy who had 1 year of boxing experience. He was in very good shape, he was in Faze. And unlike the Faze Temper we know now, this Faze Temper was actually chatting shit.
The fact that I gotta do this, call out Jake Paul to be in the ring with him. Listen, talk is cheap. Jake, if you want these hands, bro, meet me in the ring, bro. Let's get this fight.
So negotiations start, and as we know, Faze Temper won't turn this down. He doesn't care who he fights. He fought KSI, like, come on, this guy has steel balls. But where would this fight be held on? His own Misfits? Well, that wasn't around at that time. Showtime? No. Obviously, in this world, Jake Paul didn't get that Showtime deal. So it would be the one and only Triller Fight Club. Jake Paul's last two fights were on here, and if Jake Paul obviously didn't sign that deal with Showtime, then he'd still be on good terms with Triller, and this fight would obviously happen. They made him a lot of money before, so they could probably do it again. So this fight gets announced. Main event. Both men start training, and I see the build up to this fight pretty similar to how the build up was with Tyron Woodley. I mean, because obviously there's a lot of differences between Tyron Woodley and Faze Temper, but attitude wise and the way that they present themselves, they won't be the one to start the trash talk, but they won't back down when it comes to it. But to see how this fight would go down, we need to assess what point of their boxing careers these two fighters would be at this point of time. I also forgot to mention the fight would happen in August 2021, the same time that Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley actually did go down. So with Faze Temper, we can look at the footage that he showed then and kind of look at the footage he has now. Obviously, we've seen that Faze Temper has horrible defense. He sticks his chin up in the air, he has a very, very weak guard, but he's a southpaw, which was one of the reasons that Jake Paul could actually justify fighting Faze Temper, because being an orthodox fighting a southpaw, it makes things a lot harder rather than just fighting another orthodox fighter. So yeah, he has decent footwork, he is a bit of a combo puncher, and similarly, if we look at Jake Paul at this time and throughout his boxing career, he's always been a combo puncher as well, and this is something that's always been in his skill set. Powerful. Jake Paul has a lot of power. We've seen him knock out the greats. Again, the word great is subjective, please don't abuse me in the comments. But one thing we saw in the first Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley fight, he did get a bit tired, and obviously with not a lot of experience going the distance like this, we could see at this point of his boxing career, as the rounds go on, he loses a bit of his composure. So to put it simply, at the beginning of the fight, Jake dangerous. At the end of the fight, Jake less dangerous. And before I break down the fight that they would have, I might just want to mention KSI would be laughing at this. Despite him fighting Faze Temper, obviously in the same way some people were grilling KSI, people would be doing it to Jake Paul, but 10 times worse. Alright, so round one starts. This being Temper's first fight, he gets happy feet, but he takes the center of the ring, using his long reach and his height advantage, but both men would be trying to read each other out. Obviously, it being an orthodox fighter versus a southpaw fighter, it would be a battle of the footwork, and Jake would be the one that was slightly winning this battle, as having the ring experience, he would be a lot more calm and know what he would have to do. Whereas Temper, he'd just be figuring himself out. Obviously, both men like to throw combos, and although Temper would be showing more volume, being a taller fighter, obviously Jake Paul would have to take a few hits to get some. Jake would be throwing the powerful punches, and similarly to how we've seen Temper in every single one of his performances, he'd be doing his signature move. Guard up, chin up. Jake Paul would see this hole in his defense. As I said, he was a lot more calmer and he'd just be trying to build the foundations for later. Round two, it starts off that this time Jake Paul takes the center of the ring. Obviously, it being Temper's first performance and it being a pro fight with very light gloves. With Jake being the more experienced fighter, I don't think it would be his cardio or anything that he did in the first round that would make him come out like this. Instead, I think it's his confidence. As I said, he's done this before. He knows what he wants to do. As I said in my What If KSI Fought Austin McBroom video, a good clean weapon that orthodox fighters like to use on southpaw fighters would be the lead overhand. We use it on McBroom, and this would be something that Jake would use on Temper. We saw it in the Jake versus Tyron Woodley fight. Although while throwing it, he got hit with a massive shot, it was still in his arsenal, and something that, although it may not look like it because Tyron did land the bigger shot, it was still ineffective considering Jake Paul's power. And looking at Temper's first performance against King Kenny, he'd use good technique to land the first couple of shots to a combo, but then with that confidence, he'd run in. Temper here would do a similar thing, but with Jake's lead overhand, this is where I think Jake Paul would start dropping Faze Temper. Not knockout yet. Jake would be on the lead foot, bait Temper in, and then hit him with that lead overhand. The reason why I say he wouldn't knock him out yet would be because although Jake Jake's landing this punch, he's moving away at the same time. Not showing any force like this, but instead force like this. But yeah, after this, because of Temper's high chin and his poor defense, it would just be a matter of time when Jake Paul would want to knock him out. And after doing this maybe 1 or 2 more times, if the ref hadn't have already called it off by this point, considering Jake Paul is a fighter who gets confident after he lands a punch, after this barrage of knockdowns, Jake's confidence will be rising, but Temper's will be dropping. Meaning that not because of skill, composure, cardio, or anything else, just because of Jake Paul's mentality, he will use his power and deliver a brutal knockout on Faze Temper. Or maybe a TKO. Either way, Temper will be dominated and it's gonna hurt. So yeah, Faze Temper would lose. But what's in the future for both of them? Well, for Faze Temper being a guy who's always been a fan of the martial arts, who always trains and is always in shape, most likely I think he'll take a break until the emergence of Misfits or another YouTube boxing event. He most likely would come back on Showstar, which is where he originally made his debut. But for Jake Paul, it's a lot more complicated. With the fact he was fighting Tyron Woodley, in the mind of Jake's team and everyone else, Tyron was a lot more of a credible opponent, which meant if Jake beat Tyron, he could move on to bigger things. Bigger things being the brother of Tyson Fury, Tommy Fury. And as we saw in reality, Jake Paul put Tommy Fury on the undercard of his fight with Tyron Woodley. But with no Showtime deal, no fight with Tyron Woodley, this wouldn't happen. And with this being Jake's 3rd fight on Triller, why wouldn't he want to go on it again? And someone who Triller was building up at the exact same time was the guy who's trying to fight KSI now, Joe Fournier. For Jake, this would make sense. He's a guy who has a decent boxing record, but isn't a boxer. He's old, and from Temper, this looks like a suitable jump. People who's watched Jake Paul's shows will probably know Joe Fournier by now because he's been on his undercards, and Joe Fournier can sell a fight. It would be a lot more entertaining than a lot of the build-ups to his past fights. So there it would be, Jake Paul versus Joe Fournier. From there, maybe afterwards he would fight Tommy Fury if he won, but with this fight, there was a big risk that he would lose. Anderson Silva did fight on Triller, so that fight with Anderson would still be down the line. But yeah, no one really knows. I tried to give you my best predictions, so what do you guys think? Stop. I'm speaking to you right now. You watching this, look me in the eyes. If you've watched me before, thank you for watching. I appreciate it a lot, but if you haven't, then welcome to my channel. I've recently hit 20,000 subscribers and I'm so happy, and I just want to thank everyone who's watched my channel before and everyone who's watching it now, because you're still helping me grow. And yeah, I'm not always going to be writing these videos, but I want to build a community with you all. So yeah, follow me on my social medias and comment below. I'll reply to every single one of your guys' comments. Just let me know what you think would happen. Comment if you like this style of video, if you want to see more. And what type of this video would you like to see? What if KSI kissed Logan Paul? Sorry, I don't know why I said that. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in a bit.